Look, I've heard of teachers asking dumb questions before. Why didn't you do your homework? Because I was busy contemplating the void, Susan. But what happened in room 304 last Tuesday transcends the normal spectrum of academic incompetence and enters what I can only describe as performance art disguised as education. Mr. Henderson. And yes, that's his real name, because this man deserves to be documented for posterity, is a 43-year-old physics teacher who, according to 17 years of teaching evaluations, has been described as adequate, shows up, and my personal favourite certainly is a teacher. Not a good teacher, just a teacher, like we've confirmed his existence. Gold star. But on this particular Tuesday, Mr. Henderson ascended to a plane of consciousness that can only be achieved through either enlightenment or a severe lack of sleep. Possibly both. Probably both. The class was going normally. And by normally, I mean everyone was half asleep, pretending to understand physics while actually wondering if you can microwave pizza rolls for too long. Spoiler, you can. There's no upper limit to the destruction you can cause to a pizza roll. I've seen things. Mr. Henderson was droning on about Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You know, the same lecture he's given for 17 consecutive years. Word for word, same jokes. Same pause for laughter that never comes. It's like watching a man perform CPR on a joke that died in 2007. But then something changed. He stopped mid-sentence. Just stopped. Was put down his dry erase marker, which had been dead for 3 weeks, leaving nothing but ghost marks on the whiteboard, a metaphor for his teaching career. And he turned to face the class with an expression that can only be described as man who just realised he left the stove on 5 years ago. I have a question, he announced. Now, teachers say this all the time. Usually it's followed by something like, can anyone tell me the velocity of this falling object? And then everyone stares at their desks like they're suddenly the most interesting surface in the universe. But Mr. Henderson's tone was different. This wasn't a physics question. This was something else. One student, this Marcus, a kid who'd been documenting the entire semester on TikTok for reasons that are still unclear, would later describe the moment as giving off strong. I'm about to quit my job at Applebee's energy. Mr. Henderson took a deep breath. If you had to fight 100 duck-sized horses, or one horse-sized duck, and you had to use only physics principles to defeat them, which would you choose and why? Show your work. Silence. Not the normal classroom silence. This was the silence of 30 teenage brains simultaneously short-circuiting. I'm sorry, what? Asked Jessica, who hadn't spoken in class since September. So it was a legitimate physics question, Mr. Henderson insisted, with the confidence of a man who had clearly stopped caring about tenure approximately 45 seconds ago. Consider mass, velocity, force distribution, aerodynamics. Are you having a stroke? Marcus asked, genuine concern in his voice. Marcus, this is a thought experiment that combines Newtonian mechanics with practical application. This is insane, muttered Derek from the back row. Derek had never spoken. We weren't sure he could speak. Some people theorised he was just a very realistic mannequin someone had placed in the classroom as a prank. The duck-sized horses would have reduced mass, Mr. Henderson continued, now writing on the whiteboard with his dead marker, creating invisible equations that existed only in his mind. But their collective force, if they attacked in coordinated waves, would generate significant momentum. Meanwhile, the horse-sized duck would have tremendous mass, but its centre of gravity would be unstable due to the square cube law. That's when it happened. One student stood up, just stood up, grabbed their backpack and walked out. No words, no explanation, just exit stage left. Then another student stood up, then another. Within 60 seconds it was a full exodus. 30 students filing out of room 304 like it was a fire drill, except the only thing burning was Mr. Henderson's teaching career and possibly his sanity. He didn't try to stop them. He just kept writing invisible equations about duck physics on the whiteboard, muttering things like, wingspan to body mass ratio, and beak velocity upon impact. The principal, Dr. Martinez, encountered the entire class in the hallway. "Why are you all?" "He asked about fighting ducks," said Jessica. Horse-sized ducks," Marcus clarified. "Or duck-sized horses." "It's a physics problem," added Derek, confirming that he could in fact speak. Dr. Martinez did what any administrator would do. She went to investigate, found Mr. Henderson drawing invisible waterfowl on the board, sighed the sigh of someone who's seen too much, and walked back out without saying a word. Here's where it gets weird. The students didn't go home. They didn't go to the cafeteria. They stood in the hallway, and someone, we're still not sure who, started actually debating the question. "Okay, but hear me out," said Marcus. "The duck-sized horses would be easier because you could use individual force calculations." "No way," Jessica interrupted. "One horse-sized duck would have a single point of failure. You take out the legs. Basic physics. It topples." "But what about the wings?" Derek asked, and everyone turned to stare at him, because this was his second sentence in recorded history, and he was using it to discuss theoretical duck combat. Within 5 minutes, there were equations being written on someone's notebook. Someone else pulled up duck anatomy on their phone. A heated argument broke out about whether feathers would provide enough air resistance to matter. "We need to know the exact dimensions," said Marcus. "And the coefficient of friction for duck feet," added Jessica. They looked at each other. "We need to go back in," Derek said solemnly. So they did. All 30 students filed back into room 304, where Mr. Henderson was still at the whiteboard, now drawing what appeared to be battle formations. "Mr. Henderson," Marcus said, raising his hand for the first time all semester. "If the horse-sized duck has proportional leg strength to a regular duck, we need to calculate its jumping force." Mr. Henderson turned around slowly and smiled, not a normal smile, the smile of a man whose absolutely unhinged gambit had somehow impossibly worked. "Finally," he whispered, "finally you're thinking like physicists." For the next 40 minutes, that class engaged in the most intensive physics discussion that school had ever witnessed. Force diagrams, momentum calculations, velocity vectors. They debated whether a duck's bill would maintain structural integrity at horse size. They considered the implications of hollow bones scaled up. They calculated impact forces. Dr. Martinez walked by the classroom and saw 30 students voluntarily doing physics. She blinked. She walked away. She came back 5 minutes later to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. They were still doing physics. "I should write this down," she muttered and walked away again. By the end of class, the whiteboard, now with a working marker someone had donated from their backpack, was covered in equations. The class had formed into 2 camps, Team Duck-Sized Horses and Team Horse-Sized Duck. Each side had prepared calculations. When the bell rang, nobody moved. "Mr. Henderson," Jessica asked, "what's the answer?" He looked at her. "There is no answer." "What? This was never about ducks or horses. It was about getting you to think critically, apply physics principles to absurd scenarios, and..." That's when they started applauding. Slow clap at first from Marcus. Then Jessica joined in. Then Derek, who apparently had hidden talents for dramatic timing. Within seconds, the entire class was giving Mr. Henderson a standing ovation for the most ridiculous teaching method in educational history. "Did we just get reverse psychologied by a duck question?" Marcus asked. "I think we did," Jessica confirmed. "Respect," said Derek. Mr. Henderson took a bow. The next day he came to class with a new question. If you had to explain gravity to a golden retriever, what tone frequency would you use to optimize comprehension? The students didn't walk out. They pulled out their calculators.